like a tattoo you get at 15. A reminder to use AI responsibly for all of us. So, hi, I'm Federica. I work as a digital accessibility specialist at 11 Ways, which is a consulting firm that provides digital accessibility services to government organizations, product team, digital agencies, private companies. And I love design and typography, which is why I'm happy to talk about both in this talk. What does a digital accessibility specialist do? Well, I do mainly three types of things. I work as a consultant, which means that I am involved in a sort of bigger picture conversation in organization on how to integrate accessibility. So are we going to run some automated accessibility testing? Should we have an accessibility policy? Do the designers know how to do design annotations? And also running usability tests with disabled users. But also I do a lot of audits, which means that I see a lot of websites and apps, which train me to view design through an accessibility lens. And then I also give trainings on accessibility and present in Empathy Labs, which is more like immersive setup where we show how the web is experienced by personas that have a disability. So, who wants to hear an origin story? Well, you have to. So, it's my origin story in accessibility. And it starts with this armchair. So for those who are not in the know, this is the LC2 armchair by Le Corbusier, one of the most prominent architects of the 20th century, probably. And my parents have a couple of these armchairs, and I was chilling. I was just in front of the fireplace with my granny a few years ago. And at some point she sat on the LC2 armchair and she got stuck in it. We couldn't get her out for a while. Then we got her unstuck and she was fine. But this small domestic incident, really got me thinking, because it could be an instance of like bad design that still looks great. And disregard for ergonomy, but actually Le Corbusier was someone who really thought a lot about this stuff. So why does the LC2 armchair hate grandma if he thinks a lot about body proportions? Because it is based on the modular, which is an anthropometric scale of proportion, which was created by Le Corbusier in 1948, and that he applied to his architecture and furniture. So basically, the modular man, as you can see here in these drawings, is sort of a healthy white male, enhanced by some mathematical proportional gimmicks like Fibonacci series or golden ratio. So at the same time, it's both idealization and an abstraction of man. And as a result, most modern architectural forms are calibrated on a similar body, and that's why the LC2 armchair turns into a trap for the body of someone who is 86 and with limited mobility and kind of like doesn't have the perfect V shape. So it was at that moment where I realized that design can include and exclude, can enable and disable, and this all like many years and sort of adventures later led me to accessibility. But now let's get to it, text to background color contrast. So we're going to see three parts. We're going to see how color contrast is working now in WCAG 2, how it's working for APCA, this famous new algorithm, and then we're going to draw some conclusions. Before we start, just some vocabulary. I'm sure you know because like a bunch of designers here, but just to be sure that when I use these terms later, we're all on the same page. Hue is the uniqueness of a given color. So you have red, which is a hue, and then orange is another one, and blue, etc. Saturation, here it's with the color on the top, the red stripe on the top is the most saturated, and the one on the bottom like kind of this more brownish red is the least saturated, is the intensity or purity of a color versus no color. And then the luminance, very important for us later, is a physical measure of light, disregarding hue. So this is important. I mean, I'll stress it that luminance is maths. Is like it's calculated with the mathematical, with mathematics, and is the quantity of light in a color. And then what is color contrast? Because we're going to talk about it for a sec. So it's how one color stands out from another color. And you have a foreground color, for example, here the white text, and you have a background color, the orange here. It's a pretty big deal because, the web is very visual, and 99% of the internet users who see the screens are relying on good color contrast to be able to read. And for readability, we need ample lightness contrast. So lightness is the human perception of luminance that we saw earlier. So this is the most critical factor. Whereas hue saturation, they play just a minor role in readability. So WCAG 2. First of all, I just wanted to check how many of you already check for color contrast in your designs. All right, that's good. What is your experience with it? I don't know, some outliers, people love it, people hate it. It's okay.
No one is going to say that they hate it for you now. So.
Well, I'm curious, maybe we're going to talk about it more later in the question, what's your experience with WCAG 2, and if you're sometimes frustrated or
challenging,
not.
let's put it that way.
Challenging.
we had a couple of fights, so
okay. Yeah, it happens. But yeah, so I mean, you use it, and how does it work, this WCAG contrast ratio? First of all, it is a ratio of the luminance, remember, of the foreground colors and the luminance of the background color. So it is a ratio of two of this sort of more mathematical figures that we have on a color. It revolves around three figures, three of these ratios. 3:1, which is the absolute minimum for large text content. 4.5:1, which is the minimum contrast for body text. And then, if you really are trying to do the best, there is 7:1, the contrast, the recommended contrast ratio for body text. As you see, there are not a lot of variables in here. There is large text and small text, large being larger than 24 pixels or bold and larger than 19 pixels. And there is only like two types of weight, so you have bold text and normal text, 400, 700. And I mean, just to give you an idea on this slide, because of the contrast on this slide, the text, how does it work there? On dark background is like 9.6:1, and the text here, like the dark text on light background, is around 13.6:1. And the maximum ratio is 21:1, and you really don't want that because it's black 0,0,0,0,0 and white FFFF, which we all know doesn't look good and make your eye tired very quickly and can give headaches. So that's far too much. So what's wrong with this? I think, I mean, you could already tell from my explanation there are some criticalities with this algorithm. But the main one is that this sort of a pass-fail nature of the guidelines that does not really serve human perception. So this is not how we see color, and so it doesn't work to assess if contrast is good or not. Because humans are not like computers, we perceive over a range, and our perception of color are non-linear, they're sensitive to context, and they're not absolute. So, there is no truth, only perception. This is a quote by Gustave Flaubert in Madame Bovary. Is a quote with great potential for misuse, and I will try to use it for good here tonight. So, like, color is not real, and and color contrast is also not real. It's just a perception. So it is how your brain interprets visual differences from the surrounding visual information. And so contrast cannot be really evaluated as a measure of the difference between the luminance of two colors. So, and just, to show you that, I have a small game. It's more like, this game's, it could be the exercise that you do at an ophthalmologist or something, but more fun. And I need a volunteer.
What do I need to do?
Yeah, okay. Okay, volunteer, thanks. Here we go. So here, there are, you're going to see 10 sets of buttons, and right and left, and you tell me which one. We could do the one with more contrast, or we could do the one that you read better, because contrast is not the only thing, as you wish.
Okay.
And then afterwards we're going to see how your perception, how it, if it matches or not with the WCAG criteria.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start. Left or right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Left.
Daring combination. Yeah.
Left. Left. Right. Right.
Okay. So here, highlighted in red are the ones, the buttons that you selected that don't pass WCAG, but that you thought were more readable.
Okay.
And what do we have here? So, for example, this is set 9 is quite a classical thing that we see. So you said you preferred this one, which is sort of the dark text on a light background, whereas the light text on dark background has a higher score. And this is, we're going to see it, it's because it happens quite often with WCAG, because some colors have, there are issues with some color, famously orange, but also in the dark colors, WCAG is not the best guideline. But also, I don't know, do you have anything that you think you found interesting while you were seeing, or some color combination you were like, no way?
Yeah, sometimes it was more difficult, but I find it interesting, to see that I took some wrong moves, basically. It's apparently not that obvious.
Yeah, you or WCAG, I don't know, who took the wrong moves here, but
Has the beamer anything to do with it?
Definitely, probably a lot to do with it. Also, I'm seeing something, we're all seeing different realities here. I'm seeing on retina screen, you're seeing here the projector, and you're seeing the projector from a distance. It's, definitely, But so let me try to get back to the presentation. Yes. So, yes, we were saying, looking at the buttons, what was wrong with this algorithm? That it overestimates contrast for dark colors. So normally, the kind of lighter colors on dark background will appear to have a better color contrast. For example, here, I don't know if you see it, but it's just like this is gray text on black background, and it passes the WCAG checks, even though it's, very faint, I would say, not very readable. And so that's why WCAG cannot provide guidance while designing for dark mode, which is very common these days. So it's quite a big deal. Also, WCAG doesn't take into account that color contrast varies also depending on visual impairment. And I mean, here we're going to see, we're going to do a little dive in color blindness, but contrast perception is also affected by other things like low vision, for example, if you have cataract or glaucoma, situation, if you are looking at the screen in sunlight or if there's a glare, and also the device, what we were saying, low, high quality, projections. So, the infamous orange button. Which text do you find more readable? The white. Okay, well, good for you, me too. Personally, I find the white one more readable, and I think there's quite a lot of us. But technically, the black one is more accessible because it passes WCAG 2. And this is already something, but what is even more interesting is to look at this button in all these different versions of it that it's just like I ran a plugin for accessibility that created like simulation of color blindness. And so here are simulation of this 4 types of color blindness. This I am replicating a study by Erica O'Connor, which is really great. It's going to be later in my sources. Orange, Are You Accessible? A mini case study on color ratio. So basically what she did, she asked 20 colorblind colleagues to just discuss which of these buttons they preferred. Also, this is like the check with WCAG, so you can see that the black text very consistently passes, even on all this simulation of color blindness, passes WCAG, and the white text doesn't pass WCAG. I like this to visualize it like this, because really you realize that when you are just making your own little orange button, there are other 4 versions of this button out there in like people's perception in your users, and so I think it's interesting to visualize this, and ideally to take also into account when designing. And what are the results of these interviews that Erica O'Connor made? So, the majority of the colorblind users, 61%, prefer the white text, which doesn't pass WCAG. And you can see here the different figures for Protanopia, like prefers white text. Deuteranopia is more like 50-50, and Tritanopia definitely white text, and Achromatopsia definitely black text. So it is varied, and it's just a study with 20 people, but it's something. And also it's interesting that some participants mentioned other issues that are not really, in terms of color contrast, but for example, like the combination of black and orange gave them like sort of a buzzing like feeling or headaches, which was something that when I was doing the test with the different buttons, sometimes I encountered people saying it's not like really the contrast issue here, it's just I don't like this color combination. I don't know, it's weird. That's why I was inquiring. Yes, and also, the WCAG 2 was introduced in 2008. So lots of things have changed since. Now we're working with WCAG 2.2, but WCAG 2 is like the main version of that, that we're working with. And these contrast guidelines were created before smartphones and iPad and Retina, and displays were bulky and more like this, and websites used core web fonts. That was life back then. And also I'm sure that if some of you are more like UI designers, when I mentioned that text, bold and normal text, probably it doesn't really account for all the different weights that you use every day to convey like visual hierarchy. So now we have variable font, so this also weights can be very precise and definitely is more than bold and normal. So that's this font weight is not taken properly into account for WCAG 2. And so finally, getting to APCA. What is APCA? So APCA is the Accessible Perceptual Contrast Algorithm, which was proposed and developed by Andrew Sommers, a Hollywood-based filmmaker and a visually impaired himself, with 35 years of experience in color and different imaging. So yeah, the guy knows a thing or two about color, and in April 2019 he started a thread on the GitHub WCAG repo where he proposed the APCA algorithm. And how does it work? So it is based on a lightness contrast value calculated for the combination of foreground and background. And yeah, here of course the important thing is that instead of luminance, it uses lightness, the human perception of a given luminance. And it is a scale that goes from minus 108 to plus 106, and with the negative values being for light text on darker background. It's structured in these levels that are not really just about the size and the weight of the text, but it's more about the function that it has on the website. So the threshold for normal body text, sort of fluent text, is 90. Bigger body text, for example, like, I don't know, a quote, pulled out quote from the text, 75. Key information, which he describes as text that you want people to read, navigation labels, call to action, that is 60, 45 for the headings, 30 for the placeholder text, so the lower we're going, the less visible, and 15 for non-text elements, with everything below 15 or better, between 15 and minus 15 is considered invisible. Here, just to show you, on a website a little bit how it could work. So as you can see, you have, for example, for the normal body text, which you see down there on the cards, it needs to be 90. Here we have 95. Bigger body text, for example, this kind of quote here, is 76, so we just have enough because 75 was the threshold. And then the different kind of key information, so for example the key link would be a key information, the call to action, the navigation, and all of these are around the 70s, whereas it's good from 60 up. And the headings, actually we have crazy contrast on the headings, like 94, but 45 would have been enough. We have already seen how it is much more granular, how it's much more precise, and what makes it perceptual. So the fact that it takes into account text size and all these different weights. So you have from thin to bold, from 200 to 700, and the thinner the font, the worse the score and the bigger it needs to be. Also, it takes into account how the brain interprets visual difference from the surrounding visual information. Here we have like a very known optical illusion where there are two yellow dots that have the same, technically they have the same luminance, but lightness is definitely different because of the context where they are. One is placed in the shadow of another element, so in a darker context, and the other one is in a lighter context. And the perception of their lightness is totally different. Also, APCA, unlike WCAG 2, gives different scores if you swap the color combination. WCAG 2, it gives you one ratio. Here, for example, it gives you a surprise, baffling pass for this blue button, and of 4.6, and it's the same ratio if you swap it. Whereas for APCA, I mean, it doesn't pass because dark colors, it doesn't look so great. So it treats differently light text on dark background from dark text on light background. And here you can see that it's maybe worth doing it because this is the text we saw earlier of like a dark mode with text that passes WCAG color contrast. And here is text that passes APCA color contrast, which is much more readable in the dark mode. And for all our like buttons that we saw, the orange buttons, a different kind. Here with APCA, it seems to be quite the opposite. So all of them, all the black text fail because a call to action button should be around 60, whereas here we are below, and the white text passes. What is still missing from the APCA is opacity. These days there are a lot of like elements that are not 100% opaque in like web design and design systems, and this is quite complex. As for example, you see these windows that are semi-transparent, and this is a longer conversation because it really depends on the context and where it is going to show for to have enough contrast between the text and the background. So, getting to the conclusions. So, do you remember the bit about the modular earlier? So, well, even when they're created in good faith, and and this is the case for WCAG, but not really the case for the modular, norms and standards do not represent the complexity of reality. I mean, there is not one body, there are several, as shown in this image that I really love by this architect, Thomas Carpentier. Who, for his memoir, he did this work, Subverting the Standard Modular. And yes, so do not only rely on these norms, standards, tools, and algorithms, because conformance to standards is, we always say in accessibility that is not the best approach, because in the end, sometimes conformance is really hard to attain, and sometimes it's not enough. Even if you get there, actually you can have a website that is perfectly conformant to standards and still like a mess from the UX standpoint. I invite you to stay critical and to look at what you're doing and to think about what you're doing, and also to talk to your users. And in practice, Stark is a plugin for Figma. Maybe you use it already, and it's a good place to start because you can see both WCAG 2 and APCA. And I have a little video, not because I think you don't know how to use Figma, but because it's very like the affordance is really not there. So you have to go like. In this, like it opens this window, and then here you have to click on something that doesn't really have a hover or anything. It's you can see it's switching from WCAG 2 to APCA, and check for both because WCAG 2 is the current regulation, but APCA is rumored to be part of WCAG 3, but we don't know. So for now, I think it's not a bad idea to try to mediate between the two when possible. And then if you want to see my sources, they're all here. And also, I will mention that at 11 Ways we're looking for people. So we are looking for a project manager, possibly trilingual, and a digital accessibility specialist, mid-level. So if you can come to find me or my colleagues, Nora, Eduarda, who are here in the audience, or you can shoot us an email. And so I think that was it for me. Thanks to my colleague for being in the audience, and especially to Sophie, who is not here tonight, but she was also my mentor in accessibility, and she keeps running her mentorship program, and it's really an experience that I can only recommend. Did marvels for me. Thanks for having me, UX Belgium and Namahn.
There were already some burning questions from the audience.
Besides the visual plugin, could you talk a little about the tooling and the process you use to integrate APCA into your workflow?
Well, besides the plugin, so APCA has a bit of a learning curve. That's why I presented just this plugin, because it's quite simple, and most automatic tools they provide WCAG 2 checks and not APCA. So yes, there is a lot. I mean, and you can find it in my sources. There are quite a lot of tools that are created also by Andrew Somers, or like listed in his article. They are more complex. I don't use them because I find it too complex. So yes, probably I would redirect you there. I don't really, and I don't work as a designer. Also important to mention. I audit mostly. Yeah.
You criticize other people's design.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just have a question because I didn't quite understand some of the wording in your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
When you had all the levels of people, you said some of people were like, were they level of blindness or were they level of
Color blindness. Yeah.
Could you explain those? Because I didn't understand what they were.
Yes, sure. Maybe we can go back to that slide. Yeah, here basically this is just a simulation of how users with a certain type of color blindness see this button. So there are 4 types of color blindness here. Protanopia, which means that you have no red cones. Deuteranopia, no green cones. Tritanopia, no blue cones. And achromatopsia, basically a black and white vision. This is very rough, but it's like an explanation. And so with this plugin, we just reproduced how a person with this type of color blindness would see the button. And yeah, sometimes it impacts, because the color changes, it impacts the color contrast between the 2 colors, because at least one of the 2 is perceived different.
And what is the most common, like?
The first 2, Protanopia and Deuteranopia. Yeah.
I had also a question. Actually, I had a talk a while ago with your colleague Norma about something I had in the design system of the client I was working with. So I first thought that contrast rules were only for making sure the content was perceivable, but then I also heard like there's also a rule for that your interface surfaces need to be 3.1 and so forth. And so I see some designs applying it and some not. Like for example Gmail, they still use very soft surfaces. And so my question would be like in what cases do you actually, are like contrast rules absolutely crucial to understand like this is a button, for example, and when can there be other contextual cues for disabled people?
Yeah, this is one that we've talked about. We're like giggling because we have talked about this. So I mean, again, if we're talking about conformance to the guidelines, there is quite a lot of flexibility there. So you don't. I mean, there is a contrast of 3.1 of like elements and background. So for example, buttons. But is not mandatory if you have any other sign or any other marker that this is a button. So for example, if it goes like click here, I mean, it shouldn't go like click here, but like whatever, like something that is clearly like a button or clearly like a link, or if there is one of these little icons like the chevron, all of this, I mean, they are considered cues. Useful to understand the function of this element.
Could location on a page
also location on a page,
Shapes, sizes.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Sure.
It's also important to know, like this, the non-text contrast criteria is one of the most debatable ones, and I think
We had some
between-
serious debates in
Yes,
our office.
even between us, auditors on the same company, we sometimes have different opinions about it. So it's also good to know that WCAG is a norm, but it's not perfect. So it still has a lot of room to interpretation from each auditor, from each person who is going to interpret this criteria. So sometimes you can have divergent ideas over the same subject. We consider always that if you have extra Q, it's okay. You don't have to.
It always
force.
helps, right?
Yeah, the text you still have to match,
Yeah.
it's still open for interpretation.
Okay. Alright. Thanks for the nuanced answer. Let's see. Do we have time for one more? No?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
One more.
Yeah, I have a question regarding testing wise, like how you test or recruit maybe users in different,
For this user test.
yes.
Yes, I mean it's available online. She interviewed 20 colleagues. I think it's important to mention that I mean it's just so the sample is just 20, and also here I mean you have very big figures like 100% for these more rare forms of color blindness, because there was only one person for each. So one person's opinion, and this is a small, I mean this is a I would say an ambitious blog post that she wrote, so I don't know how much resources she really had, but definitely she hints at the fact that there should be more research, or this should be improved, continued, enlarged. So yes, also this is it's a starting point, I guess.
Is there then any digital test or simulator that we can use to automatically test? Those.
Yeah, it's definitely good to try to run this famous plugin, Start plugin, also on your designs. I think it's useful to understand, well, first of all, how it could look like with this different types of vision, but also sometimes it's really helpful to see if you have color dependency. So, for example, if you used color as the main vehicle for some information, because then at some if then it's all black and white, you're like, oh, but you can see that this is a link because the link has just a different color from the rest of the text, but it doesn't have an underline, for example. So I think it's useful to run this plugin on the maquettes, and I think it's a quite. I mean, it's free up to a certain type of usage, and I know a lot of designers work in Figma, so I guess it's quite available.
Maybe I can add something to
Yeah,
it.
is there any add-on extension on Google Chrome? Because sometimes it's not all about design, but also auditing some existing websites or accounts.
Yes, there is, and I can try to show you. Or I will give you the name, because we do have some Chrome extensions that we use when testing. Do you remember the names?
Colorblindly is one of them.
Colorblindly, yeah. Then there was this one. Let's Get Colorblind, I think. There's one, Let's Get Colorblind, which simulates, and then because it opened it there.
Also, I think Funkify should have something in it. I mean, even if you just go to the Google Chrome store or Firefox extensions and just type colorblind, you should be able
now
to
it's
find
here.
some. And
Yeah,
also
this one's.
also when it comes to testing with users, of course, partially it can sometimes be a bit difficult to immediately ask your users, have them stored in a database what visibility they have. But you can also try to recruit for a specific type of colorblindness.
Sometimes not all the companies have the budget for that, so it's just they rely on you to make everything compliant.
Color blindness, I mean, certain types are quite common, I think. I mean, like, I don't know if I'm not wrong, like 8% of population or something. Male population, I think.
Green, I think 20% or something. It's
Okay.
quite high.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. What I suggest is, yeah. So,
Do we have time for just one session?
okay, one more. If the rest agrees. Yeah.
Sorry, one more question. Last week I was playing with Google Gemini, Google Studio tool. So you can share your screen and talk with Gemini. So I did like a test with Figma. I shared my screen, my file Figma, and there was like 2 buttons, and I asked Gemini which buttons he thinks it looks better, and he chose one and he gave some explanation. Do you think we should trust AI right now about this kind of stuff? And what do you think the future of AI with these topics?
Well, I mean, not trusting. Yeah, it's I don't know the way we use it at work, but it's a very safe way of using it. Is like, yeah, you sometimes ask things that you know partially, and then you see what's going on if it sounds trustworthy. But this is also a little bit of a waste, because if you know it partially, why don't you just Google it in a way? But yeah, I think it's hard. I wouldn't personally. I wouldn't trust it just as like this without further research or without further checks. Yeah, I wouldn't. But
especially for testing, because for example on automation tools, there's only 16 out of 50 criteria that can be tested in automation. All the others has to be a manual audit, so it's still very little that you can do, and it's still you have to recheck, because sometimes it's just a wrong flag. So
Just like a comment here also on YouTube for a plugin. Someone said like that Stark slowed down their Figma file significantly, so they switched to use contrast plugin. It's on YouTube on the comments.
So yeah, we had 2 amazing speakers today. So but the conversation doesn't have to end here. So I hope you still stay a while, have some more beers, have some more fun. And as for UX Beers, we will be back in Antwerp at Panda and also in APCA Group in Hasselt. So we hope you still have an amazing night. We want to thank both speakers for the interesting topics that they brought to the front, and we wish you a great evening.